maybe didn't brief you about was the Cool List as well, Connor.
Mm.
Was that something you introduced?
The Cool List. Wow. There's so many things that sounded like a really good idea at the time. It was actually a very good idea. It sold copies.
Mm.
It sold copies, and you know, much as people lambast it, they really fucking cared.
That's what I was going to say. It sounds like we've
Really
talked to
cared
people.
where they were in the Cool List. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what it is? It happened. I take responsibility for it, right? Because it happened on my watch, right? So it counts as a me thing, but I won't either take credit for or kind of full responsibility for the idea, right? The idea is a classic Steve Sutherland idea, right? And it's, if you know Steve Sutherland, it's absolutely his mentality, because he's just such a fantastic disruptor. I've been in meetings with Steve Sutherland where you've got really complex issues and lots of people, and everybody's kind of eventually coming to a consensus around a particular issue. And if he spots that, he will just chuck a fucking mental grenade into the middle of it by asking a provocative question, and suddenly heads are spinning, rooms are split. He loves that shit, right? He just creates that dynamic, brilliant at it, which, you know, made him a very controversial but brilliant editor. And yeah, the Cool List was his idea. And I think he had, you know, as an outsider, you know, somebody slightly removed from the magazine as kind of editor-in-chief, or not editor-in-chief, was it editorial director for the whole kind of group, you know, which had Uncut and, you know, a bit of Loaded and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, he was like, you know, the whole scene is about cool. It's about who's cool and isn't cool. He said, you should do a cool list. That's what Rolling Stone would do. And I was like, right, I should do a Cool List, right? Because, you know, at the time I was very much like Steve says. So lo and behold, the Cool List was born, which was a little bit weird. But everybody, the fact is, it flew from day one because everybody got it. It was what everybody was talking about. And so that kind of question of, like, you know, bearing in mind that you know, there were lots of UK people, but also he's like, is Brody Dahl cooler than Josh Homme, or is Josh Homme cooler than Brody Dahl? Right, that's a good question. That's a proper pub question. That is, you know, 3 pints and, you know, kind of 40 fags sort of question, as it was at the time, because you could smoke in pubs. And facilitating and instigating those kind of, you know, being the catalyst for those sort of conversations was brilliant. I mean, it you know, it fizzled out towards the end, and quite rightly it got killed because it was a moment in time. But yeah, that was, yeah, for a while people sat in pubs trying to come up with a list of 50 cool people and put them in order. It's fucking bizarre, right? You look back on it now, it's just nonsense, but it was great nonsense. It was important nonsense.
Yes. Was it a group of you then who would sit down and decide who was getting it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was, I mean, the way those things always worked was the staff would just go to the pub, because I always had pages to sign off or meetings to have or whatever, right? It you know, NME editor sounds very glamorous. A lot of the time it wasn't. But like I said, my job was to create this kind of safe space for these brilliant journalists and designers and photographers and subs to be brilliant, right? My job was to take the corporate shit and deal with the crap they didn't want to deal with. So those guys would go off to the pub and would come up with a list. And, you know, my deputy editor, whoever it was, Alex Needham or, you know, Chrissy Murison, would bring the list back, having curated the list with lots of people over lots of beer, and give it to me. And I might shift some of them around a little bit, you know, just to kind of put my mark on it, or some stuff I, you know, disagreed with. And then, you know, and then you might rejig the top 10 based on who you thought you could get good access to and who was in the country and what, you know, what combination would look best on the cover and all that kind of crap. But it's a made up list, so you can do that sort of
thing. Yeah. Yeah, we had Neil's children on who said they thought giving Pete and Carl number one was a bit of a cop out, but I guess they're pretty.
Yeah, well, you know, exactly. But again, it's chip paper, isn't it? You know, that's what everybody's talking about that week. Everybody's talking about something else the following week, and then you go back around a year later and do it all over again.